Welcome back. Dear viewers, today we are diving into a story that has been almost completely overlooked, a story hidden in the shadows of one of the world's oldest books. You have heard of Cain, Abel, and Seth, the well-known sons of Adam and Eve, whose lives shaped the earliest chapters of humanity. But what about their sisters? That is right, the daughters of Adam and Eve. Genesis mentions them only briefly, and for centuries, their lives, their names, and their roles have remained a mystery. Imagine standing at the dawn of time, witnessing the very first family grow and navigate a world that had just changed forever. These daughters were not mere background figures. They were central to the continuation of humanity, the bearers of early stories, the keepers of memory, and the quiet witnesses to both joy and tragedy. Yet, history has largely left them unnamed and unexplored. In this video, we are going to uncover their hidden stories, piece together ancient traditions, and explore what life might have been like for these mysterious women. From whispered names preserved in texts like the Book of Jubilees to the untold journeys of love, loss, and survival, we will journey back to a time when every family bond was vital, every choice mattered, and every child carried the hope of humanity forward. If you have ever wondered about the untold stories behind the earliest chapters of human history, you are in the right place. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a chance to uncover more hidden truths and forgotten tales. And now, let us step beyond the familiar stories of Cain and Abel and shine a light on the daughters of Adam and Eve, the stories no one tells. As we journey further into the shadowed corners of early human history, the brief mentions in Genesis begin to unfold into a richer tapestry through sources such as the Book of Jubilees, a text that whispers names long forgotten yet brimming with significance. Here, the daughters of Adam and Eve step out of obscurity and into a narrative that, though ancient, pulses with life and complexity. One of the first of these daughters is known as Awan, sometimes referred to as Kelma in other traditions, a figure whose presence is both grounding and enigmatic. She is depicted not merely as a daughter but as a sister and eventually a wife to Cain, the restless son whose actions would forever mark the earliest human story with tragedy. Through her, we begin to see the intertwining of family, survival, and the delicate unfolding of human civilization, for her role was far more than ceremonial. She became a living vessel through which the fragile beginnings of humanity pressed onward. Equally compelling is Azura, another daughter whose life threads directly into the lineage of Seth, the son chosen to carry forward a path of righteousness after the sorrowful loss of Abel. Azura's story is tinged with sorrow and hope alike, for she is first described as the widow of Abel, whose life was abruptly taken, leaving her to navigate the shadows of grief in a world already scarred by exile and divine judgment. Her union with Seth, arranged by providence or necessity, becomes a profound symbol of continuity and resilience. Through their marriage, a new generation emerges, one in which devotion and spiritual awakening quietly take root, bridging the breach left by human failure and divine sorrow. These daughters, Awan and Azura, reveal that the earliest chapters of human history were not shaped solely by the men whose names echo through Scripture, but also by the women whose presence ensured life endured. They were mothers who bore and nurtured the children who would carry forward both lineage and legacy, the quiet architects of civilization whose actions, though often unrecorded, were indispensable. Through them, the earliest human families learned not only how to survive, but how to weave relationships that balanced the weight of grief with the promise of renewal, guiding each generation toward a destiny that was both fragile and enduring. In envisioning these lives, one can almost hear the laughter, the whispered prayers, and the quiet counsel exchanged beside flickering fires or under the vast canopy of stars that stretched across a world still newly formed. These women, though unnamed in the canonical texts most are familiar with, carried the weight of history on their shoulders. Preserving memory, shaping moral understanding, and nurturing the delicate roots of faith and obedience that would flow through countless generations. The Book of Jubilees, with its intricate attention to detail and its poetic rendering of events, allows us a glimpse into their significance, painting a portrait of women whose lives, marriages, and children were central to the survival and moral shaping of early humanity. By tracing these hidden narratives, we come to understand that the story of human beginnings is far broader and more intricate than any single account might convey. The daughters of Adam and Eve were not mere background figures. They were key actors whose choices and endurance carved pathways for life, morality, and spiritual awakening in a world recovering from loss. Awan, Kelma, Azura, and others like them exemplify the intertwining of human fragility with divine purpose, illustrating that even in the earliest days, women's roles were both essential and transformative, quietly guiding the fragile beginnings of humanity toward a future still waiting to unfold. In the earliest days of humanity, when the world was still fresh from creation and the echoes of Eden lingered faintly in the wind, survival demanded decisions and bonds that might seem extraordinary to our modern eyes. The daughters of Adam and Eve, stepping quietly into a landscape marked by exile, loss, and divine mandate, were not merely witnesses to these formative years but active participants in shaping the future of humankind. The unions between siblings, necessary in those first generations, were far more than a matter of survival. They were the delicate threads that ensured the continuity of Cain's and Seth's lineages, and with them, the continuation of human hope and divine purpose. Awan, also known as Kelma, became the wife of Cain, and through this union, the line that bore both the weight of human failure and the potential for renewal pressed forward, illustrating that even in exile, life had a way of finding its path. Similarly, Azura, whose life was first marked by sorrow as the widow of Abel, entered into a union with Seth, a connection that became the vessel through which righteousness and spiritual devotion could endure. These marriages, though essential and guided by necessity, carried profound implications, shaping not only the physical survival of humanity but also its moral and spiritual trajectory. Within the quiet folds of these families, the early generations learned to navigate grief, jealousy, and hope, witnessing firsthand the consequences of human choices and the subtle ways divine intention threaded through everyday life. The daughters, often unnamed in the canonical texts, were central to these lessons, nurturing children who would carry forward both memory and meaning, instilling in them the first whispers of faith, the early practices of devotion, and the ethical contours that would guide humanity long after the dust of Eden had settled. Through these unions, the fragile beginnings of human society began to take shape. The houses filled with the laughter, cries, and whispered guidance of mothers who understood the immense responsibility of their roles. Awan's children with Cain, Enoch among them, carried forward a legacy intertwined with both ingenuity and consequence. For Cain's line would reflect the restless search for redemption and the human propensity to wrestle with guilt and ambition. Azura's children with Seth, beginning with Enos, embodied the revival of spiritual aspiration, the rekindling of prayer, and the preservation of moral direction in a world freshly scarred by tragedy. These intertwined lineages illustrate the complex web of human history, where survival and virtue, sorrow and hope, progress hand in hand, and where the influence of women in these early generations was both formative and indispensable. In imagining the early gatherings of these first families, one can sense the careful balance between necessity and devotion, the whispered counsel of mothers guiding children toward understanding and righteousness, and the enduring hope that even amid the aftermath of exile and the shadow of loss, humanity could grow, learn, and thrive. The story of these marriages is more than a historical curiosity. It is a testament to the resilience, adaptability, and quiet heroism of those who, though often left unnamed, carried humanity forward. Through Awan, Azura, and the other daughters of Adam and Eve, we glimpse the intricate weaving of life, morality, and divine purpose, a tapestry in which each union, each child, and each act of guidance contributed to the unfolding of human destiny, setting a foundation upon which countless generations would build, struggle, and seek to understand the ever-unfolding story of life and faith. As we trace the lives of the daughters of Adam and Eve, it becomes clear that their influence extended far beyond the immediate demands of survival and the necessity of continuing the human line. Though often absent from canonical scripture, their presence in early human history was pivotal, for they became the quiet preservers of memory, the custodians of tradition, and the bearers of moral and spiritual guidance in a world newly touched by both divine blessing and human frailty. Within the households of Cain and Seth, these women bore witness to the earliest struggles, joys, and failures of humankind, and through their nurturing, storytelling, and counsel, they ensured that knowledge, faith, and ethical understanding were transmitted to generations yet to come. Awan, known also as Kelma, and Azura, among others, were far more than passive figures in the unfolding story of humanity. They were active participants in the shaping of civilization itself. In guiding their children, they preserved the memory of what had been lost in Eden and instilled the seeds of hope for what humanity might become. They told stories of divine encounters and lessons learned in the shadow of exile, teaching the children of Cain and Seth about consequences, responsibility, and the importance of reverence and devotion. These lessons, though unrecorded in the pages of Genesis, echoed across time, creating a spiritual and ethical framework that allowed early human communities to navigate the moral complexities of their existence. The lives of these daughters illustrate how human civilization, even in its infancy, relied upon the delicate interplay of family, instruction, and memory. Each child born to them carried forward not only genetic legacy but also cultural and spiritual inheritance. Enos, the son of Seth and Azura, became a figure whose devotion sparked the first collective turning toward God, a moment in which the teachings of these early women found tangible expression in human action and ritual. Similarly, Awan's lineage with Cain carried with it the lessons of human ambition, regret, and the drive to establish cities and communities, reflecting the complex interplay of human ingenuity and moral responsibility. Through these narratives, one begins to see that early civilization was not built solely upon the deeds of men, but was nurtured in the quiet moments of guidance, reflection, and teaching carried out by women whose names history often forgot. The daughters of Adam and Eve cultivated understanding, passed down wisdom, and embodied resilience, ensuring that even in a world marred by loss and imperfection, the threads of cultural memory and moral discernment remained unbroken. Their lives remind us that the unfolding story of humanity has always depended as much on the unheralded acts of teaching, nurturing, and moral stewardship as on the more dramatic tales of conquest, discovery, or divine encounter. In imagining the daily life of these early households, one can almost hear the voices of mothers and sisters, quietly instructing, gently correcting, and lovingly encouraging, guiding the children who would shape the future of human society. They were the unseen pillars of civilization, preserving knowledge, fostering ethical reflection, and nurturing faith where scripture may not have recorded their names, but where the impact of their guidance resonates profoundly across generations. Through their devotion, humanity gained not only survival but a moral compass and a spiritual continuity that would allow the fragile beginnings of civilization to flourish, ultimately shaping a world capable of reflecting the depth, complexity, and enduring purpose of life itself. As the generations of Adam and Eve unfolded, the sheer scale of their lives and their progeny paints a vivid portrait of early humanity, one marked by extraordinary longevity, prolific fertility, and the careful cultivation of devotion and moral awareness. The extended lifespans of Adam, Eve, Seth, and their descendants allowed for a continuity of knowledge and experience that is almost unimaginable in modern terms, providing a bridge between the memory of Eden and the unfolding story of human society. In these long years, countless sons and daughters came into being, each carrying forward not only life itself but the cumulative wisdom, traditions, and spiritual awareness passed down from their forebears, weaving a tapestry in which every new generation became a custodian of both divine instruction and human memory. Among these descendants, Enos stands as a particularly significant figure, his birth signaling a moment of spiritual renewal and the revival of devotion to God after the turmoil of Cain and Abel's tragic story. As Seth's, Enos inherited a lineage committed to righteousness and obedience, yet he was also uniquely positioned to embody the fragile hopes of early humanity. The traditions suggest that it was in his time that men began to call upon the name of the Lord, a phrase that reflects the rekindling of spiritual connection and communal prayer, a turning point in which the children of Adam and Eve began to cultivate a society where reverence, ethical reflection, and devotion were central to human identity. Through this revival, we can glimpse how early communities were not only expanding in number but also in purpose. As the faithful teachings of mothers like Azura and sisters like Awan were transmitted, nurturing both the spiritual and moral foundations necessary for society to endure. The sheer number of offspring in these generations underscores the tangible growth of early communities. Families multiplied, settlements spread across the land, and new social structures emerged as siblings, cousins, and distant relatives forged bonds that carried forward the dual heritage of human survival and divine guidance. The stories of these families suggest that amidst the ordinary labors of gathering, building, and nurturing, there existed a profound rhythm of teaching, remembrance, and spiritual continuity, in which the lessons of Eden's loss, the sorrow of Abel, and the hope embodied by Seth's line were interwoven into the fabric of daily life. Each birth was not merely a continuation of life, but a vessel through which both history and hope flowed, reminding us that humanity's earliest steps were guided by care, intention, and a subtle but powerful moral vision. In envisioning these early communities, one can see the interplay between family, faith, and survival, and Eve overseeing vast households, imparting lessons learned from the garden, daughters teaching younger siblings, preserving memory and ethical understanding, sons like Seth and Cain navigating their own paths while shaping collective destiny, and figures like Enos exemplifying how devotion could take root and flourish even amid a world marked by human frailty. Through long lifespans, numerous offspring, and the careful cultivation of spiritual awareness, the foundations of early civilization were laid, revealing a world where growth was measured not only in numbers but in the depth of faith, the endurance of moral guidance, and the preservation of divine purpose. These interconnected lives illustrate that from the earliest days, humanity was shaped by both the visible actions of individuals and the quiet, enduring influence of those who nurtured, instructed, and embodied the principles that would carry generations forward, creating the first communities in which devotion, hope, and continuity were inseparably entwined. As we draw this journey to a close, it becomes clear that the story of Adam and Eve's daughters is far more than a footnote in ancient texts. It is a living thread that connects every human being across time and space. Through Awan, Azura, and the countless other daughters whose names have faded into the whispers of tradition. All of humanity finds its origin, and in their lives, we see the first glimmers of the diversity that now defines our world. These women, though often absent from the canonical scriptures, carried forward the threads of life, culture, and spirituality, ensuring that the human family would not only survive but flourish, leaving a legacy that continues to shape the moral and social fabric of our societies today. Their stories remind us that diversity is not a deviation from divine intent, but an essential reflection of it. Each child born to Adam and Eve carried a piece of the divine plan, a unique combination of traits, gifts, and potential, and in the interplay of these differences, humanity began to take form. Skin tones, languages, customs, and perspectives, all these variations trace back to the same first family, illustrating that our differences are meant to coexist, to complement, and to enrich one another, by preserving memory, nurturing faith, and guiding their children. These daughters created a living network of interconnectedness, a human tapestry in which every thread matters, every lineage carries meaning, and every life is woven into the larger story of creation. As we reflect on their influence, it is humbling to realize that the quiet acts of nurturing, teaching, and preserving knowledge can resonate across millennia. These daughters lived in an era of extraordinary challenges: long lifespans, complex family structures, and the burden of humanity's earliest moral and spiritual struggles, and yet through their wisdom and devotion, they shaped not just their immediate households, but the entire course of human history. Their contributions remind us that often the most profound impact is made not through grand gestures or recorded achievements, but through the consistent, loving guidance that helps shape hearts and minds over generations. As we consider our own place in this ongoing story, we can draw inspiration from their lives. Just as they fostered connection, moral insight, and spiritual devotion in the earliest days of humanity, we too can contribute to the legacy of unity, understanding, and compassion in our families, communities, and the wider world. Their story encourages us to see beyond surface differences, to honor the shared origin of all people, and to recognize that our interconnectedness is both a gift and a responsibility. Thank you so much for taking this journey with us, exploring the hidden lives of Adam and Eve's daughters and uncovering the profound ways in which they shaped the course of humanity. If this story inspired you, sparked your curiosity, or offered a new perspective on the human family, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more mysteries, revelations, and stories from Scripture that illuminate the past and enrich our understanding of today. Join our growing community and share these stories so that the legacy of these extraordinary women can continue to inspire others. May you walk forward with a renewed appreciation for the connections that bind us all, and the divine plan that threads through every life.